Hey there folks, Commander Orlando here. This is going to be a quick video on building an AX ship. We're going to look at small and medium ships, and we're going to focus on shieldless builds here. So let's get going. Core internals, we want to increase our armor. So we're going to go with military grade composites, and engineering, we want to do G5 heavy duty with deep plate experimental effect. We want to maximize numbers, resistances do not matter against Thargoids. Power plant, the builds are usually a bit power hungry, so go as large as possible, in this case a 6A, and we're going to engineer it G5 armored with either thermal spread if you have a bit of power overhead, or monstered if you need a bit more power for experimental effects. Thrusters, you need to be as fast as possible and as maneuverable as possible. So we're going to max this out, in this case a 6A thruster, and we're going to give it G5 dirty drives with drag drive experimental effect. Frameshift drive doesn't really matter. You could do either a 2D and save on some weight, or if you want to move around a little, you could do a 5A and get a little extra jump range. I'll give it a 5A. Life support, you can synth life support. A D class is fine. Power distributor, you need to max this. So we're going in this case with a 6A, and we're going to give it charge enhanced with super conduit. That's going to maximize our recharge. That's very important for these. You need to keep those capacitors full. Sensors, you could do either 4D and save on some weight. Generally, the Thargoid's going to be behind you if you can't see it. Or you can go with 4A. You can also engineer these as well, depending on your preference. But we'll go with a 4D. It will be good enough. And fuel tank, you can leave that stock. Utility mounts are easy. We're going to load up with heat sinks. And usually 3 is a good number. That's going to see you through most fights. And you want to engineer these for ammo capacity. That should be just enough to see you through almost everything. You will have 1 extra available in some cases, or more. You can put on another heatsink launcher if you'd like. Alternatively, you can put on a Xeno scanner if you're not exactly familiar with where the hearts are yet, or you can put down a shutdown field neutralizer. That's going to help you if you're doing a lot of wing fighting. Generally, someone will trigger the shutdown pulse at some point or another, and it can be handy to have in those cases, but otherwise, you normally won't need it. So we'll throw a Xeno scanner on. Weapons, we're going to go with Gauss. The key thing is the placement. So in this case, the 2 class 3 hardpoints are very close together, and the class 1 hardpoints are as well, and they're close to the 3s. The 2 is down at the bottom of the ship. So we want to keep our Gauss grouping very close. So we're going to add in our Gauss cannons up at the top, our 2 largest, and 1 more here. And we're going to add our class 1s, in this case on the left and the right. You could do the center if you wanted, it's personal preference. But I'm going to go with left and right. And that will reach our limit on AX weapons. We have 2 slots remaining. So we have a class 2 and a class 1. So we're going in the size 2, we're going to give it a remote release flak launcher for taking down the swarm. And the size 1 is going to be our utility slot. Generally, what we run in those is a beam laser. Usually it's a long range thermal vent beam laser. You have a few options for what you pick. You can go with fixed, gimbaled, or turreted. Generally, gimbaled generates the most heat, so when you give it the experimental effect, it's going to cool you the most. So gimbaled is the best option. And engineer long-range thermal vent. That way you can enter into your orbits cold using the beam rather than heat sinks, and you can also hit on the shield while it's also decaying and increase that, or decrease that time. Now, optional internals gets a bit interesting. So we're going to do a quick setup here. We'll need to prepare Repair limpets come in odd sizes, so we're going to go with the max size in this case, which will be a 5. You have two options here. You could go with a 5D or a 5A. The major difference between the two is actually their range, not their repair capacity. So if you're just repairing yourself, 5D is good enough. If you're repairing others, some people might want the little extra range that the 5A offers, but 5D is fine in both cases. So we're going to go with the 5D. Next, we're going to need to be able to repair our modules. You have a few options here as well. AMFUs, you could go with a size 1, a size 2, a size 3, depending on your ship. Generally, I find a size 2 is a sweet spot. Size 1, you sometimes need to synth. Size 3 is a bit much, and I don't end up using it, but it's all down to personal preference. Put on what you'd like. But I'm going to go with a 2A. Next, we need to protect the modules. So we're going to do this in a certain sequence. So in our largest slot, I am going to put in a module reinforcement package and Guardian for the tiny bit of extra integrity. You don't need it, but if you have it, add it. The next two are going to be very small. We're going to keep the largest one intact. That's going to take the majority of the damage, and hopefully these two will remain untouched, so they don't need to be Guardian. These ones are for gaining extra module protection. The more module reinforcement packages you have, the more internal protection you get. There's fall off and diminishing returns, so 3 is a nice sweet spot. So we're going to go in total with a class 5, a class 2, and class 1. So the way these take damage, there is a priority sequence when you get hit. So the first one destroyed is going to be your largest. It's then going to go next size down, which is a 2, and then to the next size down, which is a 1. It will then go through your military slots. So if you happen to have one in the size 4 slot, it will go through 5, 2, 1, and then destroy the 4. So in this case, 3 is enough, and we can control that it's always going to be that one taking damage as long as we keep it repaired. So we're going to use the AMFU to focus on that one after every heart. Next, we need to add in some limpets. Don't forget them. The only slot remaining for limpets in this case is going to be a size 4. So we're not going to give it AMFU, we're going to give it a cargo rack. 16 limpets is a nice sweet spot. And the remaining we're simply going to fill up with hull reinforcement packages. And we have 3 slots here, so that's handy. And as large as possible. Engineering wise for these, same goes as military grade composites. You want to have them G5 heavy duty with deep plate, just max the numbers. But that gives you the basic layout of a build.